Okay, we shall start, everyone. Okay, are you ready? Let's start. We will ask you a few questions about basic knowledge so that we can start discussing later on. Okay, the first question is, we collect data in qualitative research in all these ways except so here we collect qualitative research without doing control experiment. Control experiment is not for qualitative research. The next question. Hello, Dr. Anna Leon.
Yeah. Yeah, what would you like?
Just saying hello. Let's everyone play the game first. Can you see the screen? Researchers are trying to understand why some dogs have worse breath than others. So which approach would they use? Trying to understand why some dogs have worse breath. Sorry, than others. Can I do interview? For qualitative data, you cannot interview the dogs. I don't know, maybe. Let's see next. Mr. Wang student, who is that person? The results can represent a population. It is the strength of the qualitative research. In qualitative research, usually we want our samples to represent the whole population in some way. Individual stories or experiences get lost or hidden. What do you think? What do you think? Which one is the correct answer? Is this the strength of qualitative research? It is the weakness of quantitative research because you want a population and you want something to be generalized. Usually you don't want individual stories or experiences inside quantitative research. Next one. Well, I have a lot of questions here. I think too many. Yes, that is the opposite of the previous question. I think we will do only like 10 questions, everyone, and then we will, like, after the warm up, we will start discussing with our speakers because 27 questions are too many. Okay, Đức, right? You're still the top. Oh, Vinh Bùi is the highest climber. Start with theory and then testing it. What kind of research is this? It is deductive research. Well, from one to many, it's like deductive, from specific to more details, kind of that. I think we can move to the next question, number 7. We will do the first 10 questions, everyone, and then we will start speaking with the speakers. Likely to be taken from a small sample and may not be generalizable. Well, this is what one. Yeah. They usually use this kind of statement to attack qualitative research, that a sample is too small and it may not be generalizable. Later on, we will ask our speakers to talk about qualitative research. You think that it is really necessary to generalize everything, or is small sample more important, or is large sample more important in terms of doing research? And why does qualitative research do very small sample? What's the meaning after that, behind that? Now, congratulations, Pi or P. P is back in the game. Question number 8. What is the weakness, or what do people think as weakness of qualitative research? Yeah, having little control over variables. Do you really want to control? Later on, we will ask our speaker whether we really want to control variables in qualitative research. Why is it important, or why is it not important to control variables in qualitative research? Allows for easier analysis of data. Which one is easier to analyze? What do you think? Well, some people usually tell me that I cannot work with SPSS and data analysis, things like that. So what do you think? What is more convenient and what is easier for us to analyze? Is it qualitative research, or is it quantitative research? So some of you still think that qualitative research is easier to analyze. Okay, last question, everyone. Well, I don't think this is, but this might be. I don't know. The most respected type of research? What do you think? Which one is the most respected type of research? Yeah, the answer is both. But I don't know. We will have to talk to our speakers first. And they will give you some insight into which one is more respected in the field. Oops. Now, okay, so let's see who is the winner for the first game. Miss Yi, hello. Are you there? Hello. Nope, she's not here. Someone is playing the game for her.
Hello, Maya.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello, Miss Yi. Welcome to our event. Thank you very much. And next one is Pai. Who is Pai? Can you please reveal your... Yeah. Okay. Hello, Miss Bun. Oh, so you are Pai. Right.
Yeah, it's my nickname. Yeah.
Is your nickname. Right. Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone. We have finished a little bit warm up, and our event today, our shows today, the free webinar and the free discussion today is the topic is qualitative and quantitative are not two worlds apart. And of course, like as you have already familiarized yourself with our shows, we usually don't prepare anything actually. I mean, we do not have presentation, we do not have PowerPoint slides, we do not even have the scripts. But actually, you are the person who will keep the ball rolling. You will be the ones who ask us questions, and together we will share our experience. We will I don't know, we will do a little bit of chit chatting and then try to inspire each other and to help each other overcome their problems, the issues when doing research. And it is my great pleasure today to introduce the two speakers, Dr. Anna Lian from George Darwin University and Professor Nozawa Kazunori. He is the emeritus editors of the Call Electronic Journal, which is quite famous in the field. Actually, I've been working with them, and he has invited me to be the reviewers of some of the articles there. Until last year when Professor Nozawa resigned from the title. However, he is still the honorary editor, editor-in-chief of the journal. I would like to introduce a little bit about Dr. Anna Lian. Dr. Anna Lian is one of the senior staff in the International Graduate Center of Education, College of Education, George Darwin University. She coordinates Masters in Education, international courses, and development of higher research supervision culture, which builds higher degree in research students' capacity. Dr. Anna is also nationally with Southeast countries, especially Cambodia, Vietnam, and Indonesia. And if you have already joined some conference like Asia Calls or some conference at many universities in Vietnam, you will see, you will know Dr. Anna Lian. She is a very active speaker. She is very helpful as well. Dr. Anna Lian is a high international profile in the area of computer language, assisted language learning, call student-centered second and foreign language pedagogies, and English literacy and academic writing. And increasingly, her research include project investigating qualitative assurance in higher education curricula. In 2017, she was awarded a prestigious Australian award grant linking George Darwin University with universities in Cambodia. And the grant focuses on skills for developing academic courses with curricula based on international standards. Dr. Lian's works with many PhD students, and her most recent core research include reading for emotions method. She developed support for students' language and literacy skills, Her innovative links neuroscience and call for providing student-centered approach in academic writing. And also, Dr. Annalyn knows a lot about research and ethics and politics in doing research, social justice and advocacy as well. So we will
No
try.
social justice. No social justice. I just believe in justice. I don't understand why we have to have many justices. Just one
Alright.
God. Just one God.
Okay, and I will try to exploit her in terms of she will be talking about what is justice in our field as well. Okay, and next one, I would like to introduce to all of you Professor Kazunori Nozawa. You can call him Kaz or Kazunori if you like, but okay, so I will call him Kaz today. He is currently a professor to teach English as a foreign language classes and liberal art course at College of Information Science and Engineer, as well as to teach computer assisted language teaching and cross-cultural communications and at the graduate schools of language and education and information science. And he is also a co-facilitator at Ritsu Meikan University, Biwako Kusatku campus. And he is also a visiting scholar at the University of British Columbia, Vancouver, Canada. He joined the Ritsu Meikan Universities in April 1998 after resigning positions as Toyohashi University of Technology at the end of March in 1998. And then he worked at different positions. He was the coordinator of rich cultural understanding programs, such as Illinois College in the U.S., Victoria University of Wellington in New Zealand. He was also the coordinator for CISE overseas programs in English and Technology at University of Washington, Queensland University of Technology, etc. He has been he was selected as an Apple Distinguished Educator of class of 2013 as well. So and his focus in research is on editor of Core Electronic Journal, and also ASP and English for general academic purposes. He also have some focus in studies in language education and information science, intercultural communication, e-learning, intercultural communication research, kind of that. So
right, enough.
yeah, one very inspiring. When I can talk to him and also his personality is quite, his quite has a very, I don't know how to say, but it is a very charming personality. He's always very helpful and disciplined. Well, I know that he is a very typical Japanese researcher, like very disciplinary in his work and very supportive and always try to be very positive to everyone. But today, Professor Kaz, I would like you to be critical and be frank so that we can help other people, like other participants, to try to understand what is right and what is not really right, wrong in our field. Okay, so let's go to the first question. I would like to ask our two speakers, what do you think is more important in our field? What is more respected and what is more important, qualitative research or quantitative research? Which one do you think? I would like to ask Dr. Annalyn from the role of a thesis supervisor, PhD supervisor. What do you think? Which one is more important? And Kaz, I would like to ask you from the perspective of an editor-in-chief, which one is more welcomed in our field? And yeah, okay, please.
Okay. Thank you so much. And thank you for the nice introductions and everything. It's always difficult to read these bios. They're very long. When you grow old, they're long. When you're little, they're not so long. Anyway, so I work in education, which has its positives and negatives. But in education, there is a bandwagon, a fashion. So while institutions that have something to say about the direction of educational research, those institutions prefer that scholars do quantitative research. I don't have, I mean, I could find the quote where I got it from. If you ask me, I'll find it, but I don't think I can share the screen. In any case, if you follow my podcasts, every 2 weeks, I mention that. If you force me, I'll find it. I have it here. Anyway, however, there's been a long-standing fashion among education research, at least in Australia, and I think probably in America too, but in Australia definitely, to follow qualitative research. Now, I don't think that during masters you have enough time to prepare to understand research. So then you do your PhD and you then definitely don't have time to understand what is research. So consequently, you become a researcher and very soon a research supervisor, and you don't know about research. And what happens, we do these studies which are qualitative, but in fact, what the top bodies that decide about research say, they claim that what we're doing is stuff that is irreplicable, inconsequential, means nothing. It's totally subjective. And on top of it, we have a very bad habit in education, which is not only to be idiosyncratic, which is not too bad, actually. What happens, we think we understand what we say. You know, we all say the same things. Constructivist, scaffolding, what else is in my discipline? Whatever, any of those. Explicit teaching in my discipline, right? We know what it means. In fact, we don't have to check it. So consequently, we're just reproducing stories, not producing research. And what happens if you actually even look into journals, websites which have journal ranking, you will not find education there. You have to go under social studies or linguistics, something like that. Education is not only just an applied science, but it's not seen seriously, or it's not seen as a field that can contribute hard data to the body of knowledge. You know what's the body of knowledge? The body of knowledge is what people work on, and they tell you there is such a thing like gravity. People work hard and they say the moon is actually a packet of, I don't know, of rock. You know, they've done research, they have hard data, and now they tell you. So that becomes like the tree trunk of our knowledge. Whereas education is not seen as such a field, sadly. And if you want to make a change, which is what I would like to do, but you know, by the time you get to the point that you can make a change, you're like 60 years old. And then everybody else is disagreeing with you. You're hitting a wall. It's really hard. Anyway, I'm not despairing. I'm just telling you. So, sadly, also, most of students who are entering the discipline are entering with under supervision of people who are in that soft talk, or hug your participants. Get the data, soft data, to the participant and ask them about their feelings. No, don't control variables. I mean, we're not really objectivists. We're here into art. Just saying, why do research? Why not just paint it? If you want to do research, you should know what should be at the end point, meaning like, why are you doing this? Is it to express yourself, or is it to contribute to some body of knowledge that people can rely on? I've been doing nothing else. I was trying to exercise today. It's Sunday. I got stuck on reading stuff, and it has double meaning. People say, they said, in order to teach, this is what you have to do. I published a little bit of that on my Facebook today, because when I get irritated, I publish things on Facebook. And really, like, I can't argue, with those statements. But the issue is not what they say, but the process underneath those statements. That's what we're arguing about. So I'm not saying that whether qualitative and quantitative. What I am saying is the quality of it. And I think that in America, the bodies that actually govern or distribute grants, they got really impatient with educators by producing soft, huggly, and I don't know, kissy data that nobody understands, can't do anything about it. So they basically say, maybe if you move to quantitative data, maybe this research could be more tight, more rigid, more interesting, more impactful, more meaningful. So
why do they think that it is more meaningful?
Because if you, for example, if you're dealing with words, you're dealing with more variables than if you deal with a number one. 7 students liked it. That's better than 3,000 descriptors. So in that sense, you're helping educators who can't control anything to actually reduce ambiguity to as few components as possible. Have one, just say 1 or 7 or something, say a number. I think I was fortunate and unfortunate, but I have listened to good research professors. Most research, like someone like Andrew Lyon, I'd say he keeps all his knowledge to himself. That's the worst thing you can do. I think he should be forced to record his teaching of research and keep it for posterity, because people like this die out. And then, it's us left out, we only got one glimpse of his knowledge, one sentence. So, but they teach and it disappears into empty air. So I also was at my university lucky to meet some people who had an idea of research, and sometimes we invite people who actually specialize in research methods. You really don't need, you can't learn about research from me or from someone who finished his PhD or her PhD or who has been supervising students. These people have no idea. You really have to get to people who actually specialize in research methods themselves, like maybe they've done also some, surely they do their own research, but you need to talk to people who really make research their own research, because then they had to sort of sort out things. Whereas I have a very partial view on research, and you will hear some more about it today, but I wouldn't call myself as a research specialist. So quality, not which one, but quality, but more fashionable in Australia and maybe also everywhere else is qualitative. Yeah, I'm not so sure about qualitative at this very moment. I'm not sure whether we're asking the right questions.
Now let's listen to Professors Kazunori.
All right. Can I? Well, Kwang said I wouldn't have to prepare anything, but I made just a PowerPoint quickly.
Sure.
Can I use that?
Yes, of course.
Okay. So.
Can we just see it? Because all I'm doing is seeing my face.
Right.
Okay.
Beautiful slides.
Well, can I show AI instead of introduction?
I'm Kazunori Nozawa. I'm a professor emeritus at Ritsumeikan University, Japan. I have been teaching and researching English for academic purposes, intercultural communication, mainly nonverbal communication, and educational technology, mainly computer-assisted language learning. I'm the former editor-in-chief of College, a Q1 journal in Scopus. I hope my talk will provide you with useful insights and ideas to publish a research paper for a quality journal. Hello.
Okay, just enough, huh? Okay. Well, actually, I used, Chat GPT to find out this one, and what the critical or intertextual research are. So it involves examining the strengths and limitations and implications of these research approaches was the answer. And when we talk about quantitative research and qualitative research, of course, majority of research I found or I received as a general editor, more quantitative research. And recently, more and more qualitative research and results have been submitted to the journal, but it's kind of difficult to figure it out. This qualitative research is really applicable to other higher institution or any educational setting is a questionable. And quantitative research has usually the collection or also numerical data, and they test the hypothesis and like objective measurement or statistical using the objective measurement or statistical analysis, and then also make generalization of that hypothesis based on the result. So identification of patterns or relationship between those variables. And quantitative research may explore topics such as methodological considerations or theoretical foundations or reliability or validity and epistemological perspectives or ethical considerations. And methodological consideration, strengths, and limitation of quantitative research method was questioned, and also theoretical foundation, underlying assumptions or theories or paradigms, and reliability and variability is more like a quality or accuracy of quantitative data market. And ethical consideration, of course, ethical issues are concerned. And epistemological perspectives is more like a philosophical or epistemological foundations. And qualitative research focuses on finding out subjective experiences or meanings and social processes through method, through interviews or observations or textual analysis. So this is the summary. Oops. And also critical intertextual research here consists of theoretical framework or methodological approaches or trustworthiness and rigor or reflexivity and positive positionality and also ethical considerations. And that covers these things. So in order to deepen our understanding of these research approaches, we have to understand their theoretical foundations or methodological considerations and ethical implications, and so that we can enhance the rigor or validity and ethical conduct of research across various disciplines. So this is the sample. Well, based on the my experience, I quote Hernando's 2020, the why those articles are accepted. The number one is a manuscript to deal with some emerging theme. It's really popular among researchers and must be, of course, original ones. That's why we can't accept any of the research papers after checking plagiarism's checker less than 15% of similarity, must be more original. And about the importance of metadata, title, abstract, keynote, and also manuscript to be correctly structured and written. Of course, there is no big problem for most of the reading scholars. And differences are relevant. Of course, you can't really refer to those research results 20 years ago or 30 years ago, basically. Yeah, it has to be updated. And importance of methodological rigor and the adequacy of research instruments. Yeah, sometimes researchers have problem with research instrument, and also attached to the elaboration of results, discussions, and conclusions. And around the series of plus criteria, such as research articles, etc. And also why we have to reject. Again, I cite the Thrower 2012, a little bit old, but still basics. It fails the technical screening, and it does not fall within aims and scope. That is a very bad one. And it's incomplete. Sometimes I receive manuscript which was not completed or without bibliography or references and so on. And procedures and analysis of data is seen to be defective. And also it is simply a small extension of different paper, often from the same authors. Sometimes the same author try to publish many papers, as many as possible, so that they change some targeted the research objectives, but still similar method, similar style of writing, and very not different from previously published ones. And conclusions cannot be justified on the basis of rest of the paper, so not really well written in that sense, and it's incomprehensible. Some papers are not really logically written, so that it was hard to understand what this paper was trying to say. And it's boring, maybe because of the topic was not really interested in the readers of the journal subscribers, so that. And problems found is here paper format. Well, basically we announced the submission guideline, but they are not following. Some people, well, not now, maybe they are much better now. I guess we've been training those researchers, I guess, by publishing so many journal articles so far. And some those researchers submit as PDF. Although we requested the Word format, because it's easier to check and give comments than PDF by using the Word. And the letter size, and still we get some people, A4 size is our standard, but the letter size, the number, pages are different. So A4 size is recommended. And also right to left or left to situation, like Saudi Arabia or sometimes Iran, they write from right to left style, so that some of when we receive it and give some comments on it, sometimes it's hard to, also when you publish it, even after we accept it, it's formatting problem happens. And the language is, of course, no spell grammar checked. We now require Grammarly or any other grammar checker to check it. So with plagiarism checker, so that it's much better, but the language problem sometimes. And also, as you know, the Grammarly is based on American English. So some of the, if you use that, the British English spelling can be, suggested to be corrected, right? And literature review is, of course, the out-of-dated ones. Sometimes they are done in 2010, 10 years ago, or more than 10 years ago. So you have to have the latest references at least past 5 years. And accurate in-text citation, yeah, there are lots of in-text citation mistakes, not following APS 7. So APS 7 is our standard style sheet, so that you have to follow. Of course, MLA was a little bit different from APA, so that when I check the PhD thesis from India, they are based on MLA, so that I had a hard time to check those in-text citations. Methodology-wise, single method or the maybe only one questionnaire, like a master's thesis. Sometimes they use just one questionnaire to write a thesis, but we strongly recommend to combine the more mixed method, like getting some interview result to have the qualitative research result, right? And lack of collected data, yeah, data was also questioned sometimes because very like Iran, they have only male school or girl school, right? So that only boys' opinions appeared. Well, its experimental result came out. So it's not really applicable to other world. So maybe we are even single sex data was given if they're large enough, and you can generalize that objectives or aims of the research. Maybe we can accept, but usually we recommend mixed sex data. And length is also the concern of the research experiment, that because some people use just only 1 month, and even though they have the 1 hour, 2 hours a day, it's a little bit short, so that we recommend maybe 3-4 months, 1 semester, or 1 term, or whatever. Enough length is necessary to get the data to justify the data is very useful for the research. So avoid rejection. Here, of course, you have to find the right journal and find out their scope and objectives. Sometimes even because my journal is the language learning using technology, right? But sometimes it's computer assisted language learning, so that very purely scopus, more like computer engineer use that corpus, and they apply to their teaching lectures or something. So that is not really anything very unrelated to language education, so that we have to turn down immediately. So has to be understand what's the scope or objectives of the journal to publish. And the same style as published article. Usually they don't visit the website and just send it to the journal editor. So you have to understand already published articles by reading or citing. Otherwise, it's not really useful. And review at several references published in past, as I mentioned, 5 years, right? Several, not only 1 or 2. Yeah, that is the point. And of course, to train yourself, you can go to Scribbr or APA overview of Purdue, all very good to check. And use mix method, as I mentioned, questionnaire and the interviews, and collect enough data to generalize and analyze with statistical software like SPSS. Of course, SPSS is a little bit difficult, but still you need a statistical analysis data, and this is the most recommended application software. And my graduate school, I guided those M2 students writing research paper or thesis, and with all they have to learn the basics of SPSS to use it, and write a paper using O. And now there are software called PaperPal. When you write even English, and sometimes you don't know how to say in English, you may use your mother language, and then they can translate for you. So that is quite interesting. It's not free. Maybe trial version is free, but you have to pay monthly fees if you use that. And of course, Grammarly is recommended to check, and also plagiarism applications based on Grammarly or any other alternative. Spelling checker by asking a qualified native speaker English is also another option. However, qualified native speaker of English is a little bit difficult to find sometimes, right? So maybe you, and also they have to know the some basics of, like when my journal requires computer assisted language learning, right? So those people have to know the kind of that field, otherwise they cannot check the paper. Okay, so I'll quickly finish it here. 6 tips. So these are the from the Enago Academy dejection, and now we can use ChatGPT or Google Bird, and I asked, ChatGPT is not reliable source of information according to Google Bird, and ChatGPT is trained in a massive data set of text and code, but it does not have the same level of understanding as a human researcher. This means the information it generates may be inaccurate or incomplete. So please remember. And ChatGPT can generate plagiarized content, so that you may have to content is generalized, maybe plagiarized from other sources. So be careful when you use it. And here is also can lead to academic dishonesty. So maybe we shouldn't use it, or we use it. Yeah, you may be find out your we do have some ChatGPT 0. I think they can check it if it was written by ChatGPT or not, right? And according to Bird, so academic writing purposes, it shouldn't be used, right? And it may not be best tool for this purpose. And now, according to Elsevier's ChatGPT guidelines, here you may find out more about it. This is the largest publisher for language education or applied linguistics or any other journal, I think. And also, ethics matters should be here in this publication. Ethics.org can get some AI writing tools. Comment shouldn't be authors or their use declared. Well, I just quickly made it so that maybe there are some mistakes there. So my yeah, that's okay. I'll get more comments or get questions from others, right?
Professor Kazunori, as I said earlier, as I asked earlier, so we have like qualitative and quantitative research, and in your presentation, we partially answered something about it. Like, you think as an editor, you would like research to be more mixed methods, but now let's get back to this one. Like, if I just become purely qualitative or purely quantitative? Would that be accepted? And how can I feel that how can I make sure that it is accepted even if I'm purely qualitative or purely quantitative?
Mhm. Well, there are various opinions. I mean, among the reviewers, some purely qualitative researches, quality research result is really related to specified situation, like not really generalizable to other world. So if it's well written and well researched with good references, and maybe we can learn from that research result, yeah, we can accept that qualitative research paper. But basically, maybe we recommending more mixed method to have, large data analysis result plus some interview results, so that you can balance it, and maybe more readers can learn from that kind of research paper. So yeah, purely quantitative, depending on the number of data you collected, and also how what's the generalization result, can be really useful for our world. That might be accepted, but usually both combination of both is recommended. Am I answering the question?
Yes. Okay, good. Dr. Anna, what do you think? The question is, my question is, so people usually think that they prefer, okay, like most of my friends today, when they start writing a research, and they will say that, okay, I will choose mixed methods because that is the safest way to ensure that it is publishable or it is acceptable by by my supervisor, then I would have to have mixed methods. What do you think?
Well, I think as follows. You can cheat as far as you want, but at the end you cheat yourself, right? So maybe a paper, you sort of invest in yourself. Oh, it's my first paper, or it's my second paper. I just finished masters. I just want this paper out. So this is what I think. This is what I do. At the end of the day, you are the loser. So what I'm really thinking is, as far as I agree with Professor Kazunori, and it is not about whether it's mixed method. Well, first of all, we need to ask ourselves, why is Professor Kazunori saying this? And he's saying this because our job is to work with students. We're not doing pure applied linguistics where we're counting nouns. So consequently, even when I think of work, say, of Professor Andrew Lyon and his very recent work where he does neuroscience, brain imaging, at the end of the day, you still want to know how the kids were faring when doing his exercises. Like the brain imaging might be saying that Andrew Lyon's hypothesis is spot on. He just got it. And it does. It seems to be suggesting that he's, on the right track. But at the same time, you want to know how the students were faring with his exercises. And my work using Andrew's models and Professor Andrew Lyon's exercises. So I've done work with several students, and also in my own context, I've used his exercises. And I have to say that one of the reasons why students actually went through these exercises, no matter how good the quantitative data is to show that his hypothesis holds water, one of the reasons why these exercises succeeded, say, in Indonesia, it was because there was a teacher in the classroom. Now, when we had a situation when there was no teacher in Cambodia, the qualitative data said it was repetitive, too long, too much work. And I agree. It was, if you want to change your pronunciation, and pronunciation also impacts on your writing and on your, not just on your speaking, but on your reading, on your comprehension, on your writing. But it takes work.
Mm.
Takes work. So consequently, the qualitative data from the students from Cambodia, and they were pre-service teachers, so they weren't undergraduates. They were what we would call postgraduate students, just getting qualifications to teach secondary schools in Cambodia. They just, most of them or all of them, just after a while, just couldn't go through it. So it's very clear now, not that quantitatively research shows that Andrew is on the right path. Yeah, quantitatively, it does seem to suggest. And not quantitatively also that students in Indonesia succeeded using his research. That's what we have shown quantitatively. But qualitatively, we have shown it's a hard work. And the success that they had in Indonesia was solely to the fact that the teacher was in the classroom, although some of this work can be done by students alone, autonomously, but they could follow up autonomously by themselves because they've done some of these exercises in classroom and they kind of got it. You know, you needed a motivator to get it. So now, after so many years of research and so many different studies, I can make that statement. Yes, the hypothesis sticks, quantitative results are great, but qualitatively analyzing, and we work with human beings, I will have to say, it is obligatory, if you want a success of this method, that it is carried out by the teacher in classroom, at least to a degree. Because without it, when we ran it, people just couldn't relate to it. It was too much work for the people. You know, they just couldn't relate to it. And that's what the qualitative data showed. And that's why mixed studies, what it does, it creates a multidimensional perspective on the problem, because no problem has one answer, especially if you work with human beings. So that's why I would support the mixed method. And that's what I do with my doctoral students. I want hard data, but I also want the qualitative data to see how the students were faring. And that's how I managed to actually obtain this other dimension on what appears to be a success practice created by a scholar. But, you know, it has its drawbacks. So, yeah, we had success, but then when you look into it into detail, you know, but behind the success was the teacher.
Okay. Now, last time after our second discussions, I received a question from a teacher, and she was also a researcher at a university in Vietnam, and she said that the story was that she admired a teacher a lot, and she actually spent about 12 years observing him, trying to follow all of his practices, trying to follow what he does in his classroom. And then after that, she wrote a research article about teacher's identity from the way that she observed him over the length of 12 years. But then when she submitted the research to a panel, well, the panel dismissed the research, saying that you cannot do qualitative research. You cannot really do research with only one sample, with only one person, because that even though you love that teacher, you admire that teacher a lot, you cannot do research with only one sample like that, and this is not generalizable. So, Professor Nozawa Kazunori, what do you think about this situation when our teacher has already spent about 12 years, like observing one sample, one teacher, like in ethnography research, you spend a lot of time observing the kids, but then she sent it out to the panel and the panel says something like that. Sorry, I cannot tell the name of the participants and the name of that university, but what do you think about that case? Is that fair for her?
Well, I think it's fair to say that her research is pretty useful in her own, situation, and maybe applicable to the similar situation like that. But we received one from Indonesia. I think the more special education teacher did a similar thing, just observing one, students, developing his language skills, but when it was well reviewed for the recent articles, but just it didn't fit our scope. I mean, it might be very good paper, but maybe that person has to submit to different journal to be published, like a special education, something like that. But I accept those researchers who are doing very, how do you call it? Is that more like an ethnographic study? Just more long time to observe and write down what they find out, and make the research paper based on that data. But um, it was very minor, uh, so to speak, so that minor field to do that kind of thing. So not many readers will, I say, appreciate that kind of study, although it's very valuable research. So I would say, it's acceptable research and maybe published in a specialized journal or their own school journal, but still, ordinary refereed journals may not have the difficulty to publish it for general readers.
What about you, Dr. Anna? Well, I
Okay.
particularly interested in that kind of research, spending 12 years observing one person. But before before I say something, I would like to hear from you as well.
Well, you can date someone for 20 years before you decide to marry them, but by then the woman will not have eggs to have children. So you need to sometimes be very precise where you're going. And I think that's the point of Professor Kazumori. Like maybe there were, so while you, Quen, and maybe your colleague are focusing on the 12 years and focusing on the number of participants, I think that in some gentle way, Professor Kazumori is saying maybe that person didn't frame it well enough to be so convincing that people would be dying to have that kind of original work just based on one case study. Now, I'll tell you what happened to me. I was contacted in January by a colleague of mine from Indonesia. That person doesn't have a PhD. And that was sent a paper. It wasn't well written. But first I thought I would just sort of, edit this and that, and it will be fine. But then I noticed that, so it had 5 participants, so not one, but not 300. Didn't have enough data in it from the participants. Like I would have liked to see more quotes or something. So at the end, what seemed to be just a small job became a 5-month job for me. So I asked myself, what's the difference between a publication from, say, any university and Harvard? And I think the difference is not necessarily the quality of a scholar, but it's the quality of a story.
Mm.
So the difference between, say, our average education and maybe the people in Harvard, that they've gone through enough of hoops, and enough of difficulties, that they read more. They've connected more dots. So that story that this woman was creating could have been made more interesting had she had enough of a critical eye and information of how to create a good story. So what I did, I thought to myself, right, how can I make a good story here that people would love to publish this mediocre data? And I did. I would be waiting for results. I personally am happy with the paper. If it doesn't get published, I will use its, the things that I had there for other things. So it doesn't really worry me. I mean, I've spent 5 months, but then it's never wasted, I hope. So the story I created, I looked at what the heck was this paper actually about, because the people who wrote it were convinced, or the people who did research, they didn't write it, they just wrote draft. They were convinced that they were talking about anxiety that pre-service teachers have on practicum, especially on practicum during COVID. You know, like they had to teach online. How do you teach online English, right? How do you teach online English to students in schools? It wasn't just online, it also was shorter time, because someone out there decided that kids cannot concentrate for longer than 20 minutes. Obviously, the data was showing you can't even do an attendance list in 20 minutes. So by the time they went to attendance list, I don't know why they were doing attendance list, but anyway, computer can do it. So they played that game and consequently lost a lot of time. But I asked myself, what is this paper about? So as I was working then, rather than just doing first what the authors did, which is just demonstrating the data, then I was actually writing comments about the data. And that made me look into the concept of we talk about our practice, right? How do we understand? Because what's the point of the practicum? The point of the practicum is not to get experience in school. This is what my mother would say, your grandmother would say, but a scholar cannot say that. You're paid $100,000 or $200,000 per year to actually say something more. And the job of the practicum is for you to connect theory with how you are applying that theory, how that theory helps you understand your own actions in school, which is that connection. And nobody was making that connection in the data. But not only that, I then looked elsewhere into the literature. And that's the story I was building based on miserable amount of data and and whatever, right? I was looking then into other texts, and I knew of some texts produced at my university whereby they did a smart study, and I knew from day one it was a smart study, whereby they collected essays from pre-service teachers on their experience in practicum, but they didn't do it just that. They had experienced scholars. I wasn't part of that book, okay, so I wasn't in it, but there was someone else in English literacy, and he was one of the editors. And those editors were writing comments on those essays. So you didn't just have a pile of essays, you had learned comments on those. And I read that, and then I read what the editors were saying about those essays, and they were saying exactly what I was saying. So I'm thinking to myself, okay, I'm getting a story now. Right? I'm getting a story about the role of practicum. Forget the bloody COVID. Think first how people talk about their job, how people talk about the problems they have, how people construct anything. So then I looked into how teachers talk about their work. So I found a paper. I don't know how I found this paper. I must tell you, it just fell on it was on my computer. I just haven't got the clue. Can't even tell you how I found that paper. It was on my computer. It just popped out. Anyway, it was written by one of the literacy stars in Australia.
Well,
and it was published in 2021, which is just like yesterday, right? And we have transcripts from teachers and also from directors of educational institutions, how they talk about practice. And they talk exactly the same way as pre-service teachers. As the people in Indonesia were talking. No difference.
well,
So you see, it was the story. It didn't matter whether the data was plentiful. It didn't matter how many participants I had. I had to think, what the heck am I actually doing? At first sight, it appears it's about anxiety. Yeah, you have anxiety if you are thrown on Mars and you are told to live, you will be anxious like hell. But if you have tools, you'll be fine. You wouldn't even notice you're on Mars, right? So, I mean, this place is a jungle. But because I've got tools, I've got an apartment, I've got cooler, I've got windows, I've got tools. I'm not thinking that I'm living actually in the jungle. We created a safe environment for ourselves so we can talk and not worry about the ants eating us, right? So the same my advice to your colleague, it's not the 12 years, it's not her love or critical eye. What she needs to think is what makes papers extremely interesting, and it's the story you create about them. So where do you get your story? And that takes a little bit of reflection. It doesn't dawn on you instantly, because sometimes someone may skew you and make you think that, yeah, it is about anxiety. Look, we have asked them about anxiety. You asked them about an anxiety, but I'm looking at it. Why so much fear? Why so much anxiety? What actually was happening? So yeah, so I think just because someone points a finger at you and says, points finger at the reviewers and say, oh, they didn't like this, they didn't like that. No, I also have done other examination of other things, like systemic functional linguists saying that the raters in our national exams, they didn't know how to assess students' text. The linguists were saying it's a perfectly well constructed text. Why did they downgrade it? And I'm to some lower score. And I'm thinking, yes, to a linguist, it's a good text. But to any normal person, that text is bad. So now you have to have a story to show it. It's always a story.
Well, then I have to say something. Well, I think what she did was typical of a ethnographical researcher. Spending about 12 years observing a participant is acceptable. But the problem here is how you tell your story and how you can convince people that this person, this participant that I'm observing is interesting and is worthy enough for me to do a research.
But not just that person, but you know, in your life, you actually have to know the relation. You have to know what you're doing for what purpose, and you need to connect it to the common body of knowledge. And people need to benefit from your writing. Just because you're in love with your wife doesn't mean that everybody will be. You know, so you know, so
but you can prove that my wife is the most special person in the world, and if you can convince them, then it is publishable.
All right. So we all have ego problems, you know, and it takes about 40 years to grow out of it. You know, if your parents tell you you're the best, and then your boyfriend tells you you're the best, and your husband tells you you're the best, you grow an ego. Trust me, I've got the life experience of that. So, and it takes you then another 40 years to sort of drop it. Okay. But really, you need to create a story that is for the audience. Every time you open your mouth, it's for other people. You take someone else's life now, like you don't have to listen to me. I'm just taking away some of your life given to you by nature, right? I'm just grabbing and stealing it. So I try to make it worthwhile. And I think especially when you want to publish, which means lots of people will be reading, and also the journal is interested in lots of people reading the journal, make it worthwhile for other people. And that's the story. And creating a story, it's not an easy thing.
I received one question from Miss Ben, and she asked that when I study M8, our school only taught about only qualitative research, but I found that in just 1 year, my analyzing skills with the qualitative data is not really good. So to find out something in depth and novel is difficult, and I don't feel confident about that. Besides, I didn't know how to analyze quantitative data. Well, I found that it is my weakness. So in your opinions, should I go deeper in practicing analyzing qualitative data, or to learn more about analyzing quantitative data? Professor Kazunori, can you answer this question? She asked whether she should practice more qualitative, or should she start to learn about analyzing quantitative data, or maybe should she be a mixed methods researcher? What do you think?
Well, if the qualitative research is preferable for the author, she or he can move on to write more, well-designed, well-researched qualitative. So, but again, when it comes to the publication, I think it depends on the journal's preference. May causes some problems. Like if it's well written and well researched with a qualitative research paper, maybe they can accept if it fits with their scope or the objectives. But I think still myself from my past experience, probably a mixed method is more appealing to those readers, so that it's more likely to be accepted. So I would recommend mixed method, and even though you can still, that person can still move on with the qualitative research style, but still I think a mixed method is more appealing to ordinary readers, so that I recommend that.
What do you think, Professor Anna?
Well, we're just talking continuously. That's what I'm saying. It's typical educational research. We don't agree, but we don't know what we said. So if I totally agree with Professor Kazunori, but the problem really is, what does it mean she can't analyze qualitative data? If you can't analyze qualitative data, you can't analyze quantitative data, because the framework is the same. You need to have a framework. It's a framework that dictates the analysis. You have to construct framework. So I am sometimes asked to review papers in journals, often Asian journals, even first category journals. And I get desperate. I think I'm the best reviewer on the planet. Professor Kazunori, who doesn't want me as a reviewer. Do you know why I accept most of the papers? Because I have seen published so many bad papers, I'm saying to myself, why should I harm this person for the bad paper when every time I open journal, it's the same? It's the same. So just publish it and just move on, Maybe one day we will get, on the basis of your bad paper, someone will create a better. So basically, problem statement. Where did you get your problem? You have to narrow down the problem. I just wanted to show you something. I don't know whether I can, but I will.
Yeah,
I'll send you a link. I'll send you a link. Where can I type? I can't type. I can't type, so I can't type it here. Anyway, I've produced something 9 years ago. I've produced a model of how to actually focus a research question. Now, obviously, 10 years later, I would do it better. But if you had an experienced supervisor, you could actually use this model. It tells you step by step. It's a video. My university put it as online on their channel as one of its resources. It's a very nicely produced video. I wouldn't know how I did it back then, 10 years ago. I used to do things like that. So you need to frame your problem. You need to frame what is it. And once you frame the problem, you really are, from your literature review should give you not just the problem, but also the variables. And in that sense, when you contrast variables against one another, you should be home and hose. You shouldn't have a problem with analysis. So if someone says that they don't know how to do qualitative, I would say they also will not know how to do quantitative, because what you need to know is to actually frame your study. That's the most important thing. And that's why I was saying myself that maybe I'm not a specialist with what goes down the road once you do your study. Then I send my PhD students to either do the reading of books, or we follow some other studies and we explore how it is done and how it will be good for us. And also I have a panel of people, including Andrew Lyon, and I have a panel and we decide. Sometimes my students do it better because we had examiners who said things like, oh, why didn't you do this? and we are responding, well, why didn't you notice that there was a difference between one group and the other group? So consequently, we couldn't use ANOVA. We had to use UNCOVA or something, or ad hoc, something, what is it called? Something, there's some name word for it. Anyway, some different type of analysis. So we even knew better. But the most important thing is to frame, set up your study, and then you worry how you will be doing the counting. But yeah, that's the framing.
Okay.
So learn how to frame, not how to analyze. Learn how to frame. When I say, for example, sometimes I would get, I don't know why I was getting these things. I must be nice. I get it from nowhere. And people ask me, could you please see how this literature review is done? And it was by a Thai PhD student. I have no idea anymore who sent it to me and why. But I'm a good girl. I sat through it and I looked at it. Now, what can you say? You've got to organize your literature review according to something. It cannot be this one said this one said this one said this one said this. It's like sitting on a merry-go-round. Blah 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 blah. You know, like at least divided into research paradigms, divided into intellectual paradigms. You know, so this was maybe this way of looking at the problem. This was another way of divided somehow. And then you may get from that different values, and they will inform your framework.
Well, we received more questions from Mr. Din Anduk, but before we move on to this question, I would like Miss Ben, are you here? Can you turn on your mic and turn on your webcam as well?
Yes.
Right. You've been listening to our two speakers telling you about having a framework, conceptual framework, theoretical framework, but I would like to ask you one very fundamental questions. Well, what do you believe in?
Yeah, actually, I think that about my one view, it kind of mixing. Sometimes I think that I quite care much about the in-depth story of the people, but sometimes I also want to generalize to find out something can apply for many people. So I think it depends on the the topic of the research that I want to know about. Yeah, so I think to when
So
I learn,
do you believe in well, we discussed this in one of Anna's podcasts. Do you believe in truth or do you believe in realities?
it's really hard to say for me because in the past I think I believe in the multiple reality, but then I see myself change a little bit from into believe in. I think that there are also they have both a lot of reality of the people also, but they also have the singular truth can apply for everyone. So yeah, it's quite hard to right now. I don't really find that I focus more on quality
I think that one is really important because well, when we usually struggles among paradigms, but we never get back to our epistemology and ontology. Well, you have to start with epistemology and ontology and your world view first. How can you perceive of this world, and what do you believe in? Like, do you believe in numbers or do you believe in stories? And then you can start to decide whether you would like to be a qualitative researcher or a quantitative researcher or a mixed methods researcher. Dr. Annalene, I noticed that you want to say something.
Yeah, I think if so, in Australia, you don't have a course called PhD, or you do have a course, but not coursework. You have a British system whereby you just sit there and sweat out your thesis, right? But after, so you get admitted, and then you have about 6 months. Obviously, there's a bit of sliding if you need, but say 8 months to be on a decent side of things to defend your proposal. And when you defend your proposal, if you get the right committee, they will ask you a question, which is, where are you methodologically in your study? How do you define your I? Right, so it does matter. It does matter how you define your I. Are you, so there was some, because how you need to make a statement about what's your, how do you, it's about the role of your research in relation to the people or objects or whatever it is to affect, right? So are you thinking that if you discovered something, is this going to be of benefit to you, or is it going to be of benefit to those subjects? And how do you convince us to that? Now, there's this guy, Bruno Latour from France, and he asks this question quite poignantly. He says, if you study ants, you know, the creepy crawlies, and if you find out something interesting about the ants, do you think ants care? Do you think that, is this done for ants? I mean, he has this question way better said, but I just, if you were studying ants, he says, would you expect ants to learn something from your study? So in every sense, what he is saying, if you're studying something, you're studying for yourself. So it's not immediately applicable to students. You're studying for yourself. So you still have a problem to solve, which is how to now make these findings talk to students or be of value to students.
Mm.
Right? So every study which you do is the study for you. But very often we take it for granted. Oh, I found this, therefore this is good for my students. No. Why do you expect that students will learn something from your study? That's the second step. And the other thing I wanted to say, so that's the ontology question, whereby you define your I. You know, and if you define your I, you learn that you've got two-step problem, not just one-step. Or you find that you have this particular result. Yes, but what does it mean? You know, what does it mean? So students learn by analogy. Let's assume that learning is analogy making. So what's the next step, which is
So
the
that-
application of it? But just wait. I wanted to say something. I'm sorry for grabbing the spot. But I wanted to say it because I think ontology, because we're talking about framing. So ontology was extremely important. I'm so happy, Gwen, that you mentioned that. And the other thing I wanted to say, but from my experience as a reviewer, where I get impatient, and that's why I accept every paper, just unless the paper is really bad, like really bad, you know, it's just really bad. You cry. You can't actually put together two sentences out of it, you know, in your head. So we have it's a slip. So we have scholars talking about literacy, never defining what is text. You need to define what is text. You're talking about the text. You tell me what is text. So because from that definition, relationships in regard to research and the methodology and the way you want to apply the results will follow. So you can't talk about literacy without defining the text. You can't talk about reading without defining what is reading. You can't talk about listening. Without defining what's listening. So I went to some defense of some proposal, and this student was talking about comprehension, and they said it's cognition. Sure, you know. So what's pain? It's feeling. Yeah, I'm sure that no neuroscientist defines pain as feeling. You know, because it's not solving anything. You need to be so precise so that then from this things follow. So you can't define comprehension as cognition because it's obvious. You cannot, without the brain, you have no comprehension. So it's too loose. So what I'm really saying, ontology, yes, and the other part of the framing of the study is if you're looking at some skill, say reading or listening, define those things. You cannot say, oh, it's comprehension of how much people understand. What is listening? What is reading? Literacy, what is text? In fact, I would want to see any of those people to define text first before they define listening or reading.
Okay, right. So I would like to summarize things for the questions from Miss Ben. I think that I agree with the two speakers here. Well, the fact that you defined whether you are a qualitative researchers or quantitative researchers or mixed method researchers does not really comes from whether you are good at analyzing text or whether you are good at analyzing numbers. But first, should start with how you define your eyes. Which do you believe in? And if you can start with your belief, you can really understand that well, I believe in truth, I believe in realities, or I believe that there are many realities, but there is only one truth. Then start from that, and you will walk your way through shaping yourself. And by the way, there are different types of mixed methods. And well, when you start with mixed methods, you should, well, I don't know, but I personally define myself as a pragmatics, which means that I will choose different styles for different situation, versatiles, flexible, things like that. But we need to be very precise and very certain about different situation. What do we mean by different situations? Because there are different models of mixed methods. It is not just one model of mixed methods, as people may think that I would start with quantitative first and then I will follow up with qualitative and that is done. No. And to answer the question from Mr. Anduk from a mixed methods researcher's point of view, I think the biggest problem is that you think that you are doing mixed method, but actually you are doing two different research in one paper. You do one part of qualitative research and one part of quantitative research without really connecting them together. And that is the biggest issues. I notice many people say, okay, I have two questions. And for the first questions, I will do qualitative. And for the second question, I will do quantitative. And here you are, my research paper, and that is nonsense.
It's a good point. I really like it, right? You should have one research question and then two ways into the data. I quite like it, what you said. That's a good point.
Yeah. The thing is that we need qualitative and quantitative together because we need to clarify something that, for example, quantitative cannot clarify. For example, well, if I'm investigating a new topic and I want to create a questionnaire for that specific new topic, which I cannot find literature, then I can start with qualitative research. First, I will interview some expert in the fields. I will interview some stakeholders, and I can decide some emerging themes, some important themes. Of course, I have to read literature and I have to make sure that, okay, there's no such thing in literature yet. So I can start with qualitative by exploring things. And then after I have explored the main themes, I can start writing the questionnaires, and then I can start collecting data to validate the questionnaires. So you can look at a model that I'm showing here, and that is called exploratory design, for example. So the two part of the mixed methods, a mixed method study have to blend together and complement each other. We do not stuff two different research into one piece of paper and say that that is mixed method. Well, that is the total different story, a totally different story. Professor Kazunori, well, can you say something about the difficulties of quantitative and qualitative and mixed methods as well? I've already say something about mixed methods, but I think as an editor, you will have more insight into the difficulties that people usually have when they do each type of research.
Well, as you already explained about the difference of quantitative research and the qualitative research, so I think every participant understood the differences now. And from my experience, as I mentioned, that the special case from Indonesia, the sample is very small, and the topic is, even though appropriate, but the result is not really applicable to other educational settings. So it's not really interesting to the journal article, so that it can be published in any other publications, but in my case, in my journal, it does not fit, and simply does not fit. And those of qualitative, even quantitative research paper, they have some sampling problems or methodological problems exist, so, and may not be really applicable to be published in our journal. So it depends on case by case. So we have to decide, look at the reader, and also we have a plenty of variety of reviewers to ask. And some reviewers are not really expertise in certain field, so that we have to always have a couple. And if they disagree, one person reject, one person accept, we have to ask a third person to review it again, so that it takes longer time. However, those are, or the leading scholars, so I make much of the opinions, so that based on their opinions, we decide to accept, or still, even some papers continue to be revised and revised. Sometimes longest paper to be reviewed or revision repeatedly took almost a year. So data has been outdated, so that maybe at the end may not be welcomed by our readers. So it's kind of difficult to decide. So what you were saying is that from my experience, it's based on the case, the quality of the research paper. It doesn't matter which was based on the quantitative data or qualitative data. So we can accept well-designed, well-researched, collected data, and well-analyzed style, and came to, this theory to, good connection between the theory and practice. And maybe we can appreciate that research paper to be more applicable to their readers' own situation. So we don't really discriminate clearly about that difference of the quantitative or qualitative data, qualitative research papers. Am I answering the questions? I'm sure.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I would like to add something to answer Mr. Đinh Anh Đức, right? So, for a quantitative research, from my experience as a reviewer and a code editor, and I also publish several articles. I noticed that the biggest problem when people start doing these type of quantitative research is that first of all, they have very faulty, a flawed research model. Well, and that is not a simple thing to rectify, because their model of doing research is not valid. It's not well designed. So that is the first problem. You have to be very careful with what you designed, because later on, after an experiment, you cannot change things. You cannot go back and say, okay, I will rewrite the research model. And the second thing is that when you analyze data, one of the most common issues, I don't know if other reviewers notice the same thing, but one of the most common issues I notice as a reviewer is that people usually think that because we are applied science, we are applied linguistic researcher, applied education researchers, so we don't need to understand statistics. So okay, I noticed that many people conduct independent t-tests, so I also do independent t-tests in this study. But actually, people usually forget to check the assumptions. Or for example, today I review an article which use EFA. EFA is exploratory factor analysis, and every step was correct, except for that the researcher didn't check the assumptions. Like there are prerequisites, there are requirements for you to check before you can start doing the data analysis. For example, like in Vietnam, to get married, first of all, you have to be a man and you have to get married to a woman. If you are not a man and you are not going to get married to a woman, then that is not called marriage. Well, of course, in all different countries, they have different laws, different rules about marriage. But in Vietnam, you have to be a man first, and then you have to get married to a woman. The same applies to quantitative research. There are things called assumptions, and these assumptions must be checked. For example, if the score is normally distributed, before you can start conducting t-tests. But people usually forget that part. They jump immediately to really like collecting data and start doing t-test analysis.
Yeah.
And that is the biggest problem. And also people usually think that to save time, I just need to borrow a questionnaire and start doing research right away. But that is wrong, because well, any questionnaire works for a certain context, and like last time Professor Gan says, which words in what context for whom. And if you just like copy everything from another study, like a whole questionnaire without adjusting, adapting things and bring it to your study, then you need to justify that your context is identical to the context that is conducted in another study, or else there would be problems when you start collecting data. So because quantitative data or quantitative research is usually a cut over a one-time research, you will not that this will not be a longitudinal research. It would not last for like 2 years or 3 years. You just come to your field like a day and then you can start collecting data, or you can do experiment once. You cannot do experiment like 10 times or 7 times again and again and again, like in qualitative data. So research design is very important, and checking assumption is very important, because you cannot rectify things after thing has finished, unlike in qualitative research, which later on you can modify the questions. And Dr. Anna, what are some issues when people do qualitative research? Can you share with us?
So I just think it's identifying the variables and basically framing. For me, it's always framing, because when I look at people's work, I never know how they got what and why they expect to get any results out of it. I'm always surprised. So I've done all kinds of studies with my doctoral students. When I was doing, say, the Cambodian study with Nami Lor, so she got examined and had no corrections to be made. She had international examiners. So we spent a long time on theorizing each aspect of the. So we had two large steps of analysis, and we spent a long time. So we didn't just go and ask questions, because that's what irritates me, I would just go and ask questions. I remember I created an enemy in the institution where I am now. This person is gone. But I'm very naive. I came to this institution and there was a PhD student, years of experience with doctoral students. And there was this student who was supervised by someone, and she was giving a talk, and I was functioning then, coming from different institutions, thinking that we're all free and in it, we just want to share and exchange and brainstorm. And I asked her a question, when she presented her PhD proposal, I said, where did you get your questions from? And why this many? Why not just one? Why 10? I mean, tell me. Oh God, I never knew. That created so much trouble, this question. But it is. Where did you get your questions from? So I prepared some things for today, but I can't share the screen. But we really had, so one of the things, for example, I might be able to find it. We did with whom? With everybody. So for example, I'm just not gonna look for it, but we were looking everywhere for frameworks. So for example, I like Christensen. What was his Christian name? The guy from Harvard who just managed to die. So he's done a study on business, in business. So the guy from business school, he was the chair of the business school at Harvard, and he's done his he's done years of study for different businesses, and he's developed this framework of a job to be done. So he has these 3 questions. If I just could find them. They're very interesting questions. And anyway, so we built a questionnaire with my students around Christensen's framework. What's the job to be done? What's the job to be done? So basically, so that was interesting, because we didn't invent those questions. We actually worked them out from his framework. So obviously we asked questions around it, but aiming towards that. So we were trying to suss out how people construct their jobs, but we didn't have a framework asking questions. And the framework from name. So, but when we asked about the job to be done question, when we got from him, was very good. So we used who else? Barroway, Mikhail Barroway. So the Russian scholar, but he's obviously American. So we used him. He had a framework for universities. Was the job of a university? Was the job of research? And that was fantastic. That gave us questions. So I've got this thing here about the what experiences. So Christensen's framework was, what experiences need to be provided for the job to be done? Oh no, first question is, what is involved in the job? Now, what experience? So what's involved in the job? What experiences need to be provided? And how do you think in your context you need to purchase those experiences to be provided so you can actually complete the job that you were hoping to do? So the questions follow from one another and relate to the first, which is, so what do you need to purchase? So we then had to reframe these things in relation to our context, but we had framework. With Barroway, we also had the framework of what's the job of university. So that was very interesting. So whatever questions we were using in our questionnaires, they were actually sitting in the framework to define an institution or to define your job within the institution. So that it wasn't from empty air, but it all depends on how much you and your supervisor are reading. If you're reading only education, you're basically repeating the same stories, unless you are lucky to find some interdisciplinary readings. So that's the thing, where did you get your questions from?
I see. And
if you want to that's right. If you want to describe institution, you need to have some parameters that will enable you to do this job. And you can't invent them as a 20-year-old scholar. They popped into my head.
Yeah, one of the biggest problem of Vietnamese students, and I think there are many researchers as well, like novice researchers facing this problem, is that they analyze things without really having a framework. I think that qualitative research is easy because they don't follow any framework. They just start analyzing, and that is the problem. And there are 2 problems that I would like to add when you do qualitative research. Well, get back to the story that I told everyone about a researcher starting with only 1 participant. well, when it comes to qualitative research, we usually choose the type of purposeful sampling. Well, we choose someone for our purpose, not because this is a random sampling, not because that's someone just fall from the sky and then you will start analyzing him or her. We do everything with purpose. But one problem that we usually have when I read Vietnamese research, sorry, not Vietnamese research, but research from the Vietnamese, is that they don't really give us reasons why they choose a participant. They just describe the participants like, okay, there is one male and there is one female, but why? Why do you choose one male and one female? What is the purpose behind that? And another problem is that, well, they start analyzing data for qualitative, and I start, how do you know that you have enough data? And they stop talking. Like in qualitative research, even though that you are analyzing text, you have to have rules and regulations. You have to analyze your data, or even if you do not have enough data, you have to get back and ask the participants again until your data reach a point that is called saturation point, or point of data saturation. It means that even if you ask like 10 times or 100 times more, there would be no new answers, or there would be no new information emerging from that. And there are many articles talking about data saturation or finding patterns in qualitative research analysis, qualitative analysis, but I don't think that many people notice that. They just say it is.
So when we had a pretty good framework, and I'm thinking just of one aspect of that particular PhD with that student from Cambodia, we had a pretty good framework. But by then I was already an experienced mentor, an experienced scholar. So when the girl came to study with me, I had enough of interdisciplinary. I mean, I'm no expert, but I haven't. I've got enough of. I've got not enough. I've got some. So anyway, what was very interesting when Barraway talks about the role of the university, or in the community, he talks about policy, affecting policy, developing professional capacity, building critical community, and public visibility. But public visibility is the role of a university in the community. When we applied it to schools, so when you have a framework, my point is, you will ask your participants questions that you wouldn't have asked without the framework. It just wouldn't occur to you. And it wouldn't occur to you because you're part of a system. And when we were looking at the data, it was very interesting to see. So one of the things we found out that scholars, English education scholars in Cambodia only research their own context of work. So that's the first thing. They don't talk to one another. I mean, to each other they talk, but they don't talk to teachers and schools. That is just absolutely, no connection. And one of the things we found that everybody had a problem, and there was no data really provided, very little, in relation to how schools or universities work, either together or separately, on building that public visibility. Schools basically, everybody when asked this question, they relegated their job to the ministry. They themselves didn't see themselves. So that was back then. I have visited Cambodia since, and they're doing interesting things to change it, drastic things to change it. Like I wish other countries learned from it. So it's an amazing experiment. But that was the case. Community was non-existent. And it's very interesting to see that what's happening now with schools in Cambodia, schools still weren't able to do it themselves, but the direction didn't come from the ministry, but from the university, from the School of Education. They started to get their act going and actually made change. So now the community is working, and you can't, go back on it. They kind of addicted to it. But had we not had this framework of Michael Barraway, we would have never asked the question about the community, because I would maybe, but most people wouldn't, because they're a part of the system. And if the community is not inside of your picture, you wouldn't ask. And that's how you influence the data. Because without the framework, you have skewed questions.
Right. Okay, everyone, our event is coming to an end soon because it's already 4 p.m. Do you have any questions or like any other question, please? Okay, so if you do,
If I don't mind, if you don't mind,
yeah,
I don't want to frighten people. So you don't look for this. You don't actually think, oh my God, so Anya is experienced and old, so she found the framework. No, you just type on Google, what is your interest? And don't be
mm,
shy. Don't shy away from texts which are, say, in a different discipline. Look at them. That's how I did that. Just look at them. And you'll find amazing things. And they're written very easily.
mm,
So rather than, and you don't have to think to yourself, oh, this might be bad. Just say that you're writing this particular thing from the framework created by Professor Barroway, for
mm,
example, right? And that's good enough
mm,
because we're testing Barroway's model, where how much it can reveal for us, not how much truth it can tell to God, but how much it can reveal to us, as opposed to compare with what we knew before.
mm. Right. Thank you, Professor Dr. Anna and Professor Kazunori. Well, I will wrap things up. Today we've been first of all we start talking about what the roles of qualitative data and qualitative research and quantitative research. And Professor Anya Leon, because she believed that well, we are not objectivist, even though some of us believe that we are objective, but we are not objectivist. And well, these days it's more important that you analyze the data in depth, like qualitatively, rather than just focus on numbers and statistics. And she said that the thing that most important is the quality of research, whether it is quantitative or qualitative. And then it is to our great pleasure, Dr. Kazunori has demonstrated an AI introduction first, and then he also explained several factors related to publications, and he concluded that mixed methods is currently very trendy in our field. And um, as a journal editors, he used to receive more quantitative research, but now it seems like the number of qualitative research and mixed methods research are increasing, which may suggest that if you would like to get published in a Scopus or in Web of Science Index journal, international journal, you should think about adopting different approaches to doing research rather than just like following one simple like quantitative research only. And he also mentioned uh, factors that lead to a successful submissions and factors that lead to rejections. And I really appreciate that, because I think most of the participants really want to listen to these things, because they really start their researching career or start publishing an international framework. And he stressed that we should not rely on single methods, but we should rely on different methods so that we can increase the chance of our articles being published. Um, well, and then we start to answer different questions that focuses on the choose of the framework. As Dr. Annelian says, as long as you have a good framework, you can start doing good research. But we have to slow down a little bit and start to remind each other that you have to define your eyes, who you are, what your epistemology and ontology are. You have to start with who you are and what you are first before you start doing research. And doing research does not mean that we just follow a step of preset steps, but it is also about exploring ourselves and exploring the objects or the participants. It's not just about the participant, it's about us as well. And we also talked about disadvantages and issues that people usually encounter for mixed research methods. we agree that you need to know why you choose a mixed research methods. It is not just by combining two set of processes together and then you have a mixed research method. That is not that easy. We also talk about the problems with quantitative research by well, setting wrong questions, designing wrong model, does not care about assumptions when you start analyzing data. So these are the things that we usually face when we do a quantitative research. And for qualitative research, Dr. Anna says that it is more important to have a framework, and framework is really, really important again, as she reminded us. And as long as you have a good framework, you will not need to care much about the further problems in the future. And I would like to remind you that the way that you choose participants should be purposeful. You have to understand why you choose a specific participant. Even if you have only one participant, it is okay, but you have to prove that that participant is worth consideration and it is very, very special. Well, you have to convince the reader in the panel, not just using your love or not just using your admiration for that person. And also you have to make sure that your data meet the saturation point, or else you do not have enough data. Your data is not rich enough for analysis. So thank you very much, our two speakers today. Do you want to say a few words before we end our today's meeting? Dr. Anya, would you like to say something?
I have to go. I have mother to
Yeah.
call.
Okay. Professor Kazunori, would you
Okay,
mind saying a
I
few
just
words?
send the notes.
Ah,
Thank you very much for such a good opportunity to share my idea, or I learned a lot through the webinar. So I hope to see you again somewhere online or possibly offline in Vietnam or in Japan. Thank you.
okay. Thank you very much, everyone. And in case you have further question, please send me on Facebook, and then I will redirect this question to our speaker. Thank you very much, and see you again. Bye bye.